Lewis Hamilton is reportedly furious because Ferrari may have just lost the one weapon that could have made them unstoppable. And the FIA did not ban a small upgrade. They targeted the exact innovation Ferrari built their entire future around. A hidden aerodynamic system so powerful, insiders believe it was worth up to half a second per lap. Half a second. In Formula One, that is not an advantage. That is a massacre. And here is where this story becomes absolutely explosive. Ferrari reportedly redesigned huge sections of the SF26 just to make this concept work. Then rival teams saw the gains, rushed to copy it, and suddenly the FIA moved towards shutting the whole thing down before 2027. Now Hamilton is caught in the middle of a political storm that could completely change Ferrari's championship future before it even begins. But this gets even worse. The FIA is not stopping with one restriction. They are also targeting Ferrari's halo winglets, tightening engine regulations, and closing multiple loopholes Ferrari exploited better than anyone else on the grid. And inside the paddock, one question is spreading fast. Did Ferrari actually break the rules? Or did they build something so advanced that Formula One panicked the moment everyone else started falling behind? At first, almost nobody realized how serious Ferrari's innovation really was. That is what makes this entire situation so shocking now. Because when Ferrari introduced the system earlier in development, most rivals treated it like another clever Formula One experiment. Interesting, aggressive, but probably too complicated to become a real long-term advantage. Then the numbers started leaking inside the paddock. And suddenly everything changed. Because Ferrari was not finding small gains. They were finding championship-level performance. The system, called flick tail mode, used hot exhaust gases to manipulate airflow underneath the rear diffuser, increasing rear stability and aerodynamic efficiency at the same time. Now that sounds technical, but the effect was simple. The car became dramatically more stable when drivers pushed near the limit. Imagine driving at full speed on a wet road, then suddenly feeling the rear tires grip perfectly exactly when the car should have lost control. That is the kind of confidence Ferrari created. And confidence in Formula One is everything, especially for Lewis Hamilton. Because over the last few years, Hamilton repeatedly struggled with unpredictable rear-end instability at Mercedes. Cars that snapped unexpectedly during corner entry. Cars that forced him to hesitate instead of attacking aggressively. Ferrari believed this concept could completely change that feeling. And according to the report, the internal performance estimates were enormous. Conservative calculations already suggested around 0.2 per lap. But Ferrari reportedly believed the system could deliver gains approaching half a second when operating perfectly. Half a second. That is not normal in modern Formula One. That is terrifying. To understand how big that advantage really is, imagine two Olympic runners competing in a final. Now imagine one athlete quietly starting several meters ahead before the race even begins. That is what half a second feels like at the front of Formula One. And Ferrari was so confident in the concept that they rebuilt major parts of the car around it. The team reportedly redesigned the entire transmission layout of the SF26 just to fit the system correctly. That is an enormous engineering gamble, because changing transmission architecture affects almost every area of the car. Weight balance, cooling, suspension geometry, reliability, packaging, everything becomes connected. Teams do not take risks like that unless they believe they are chasing something revolutionary. And Ferrari clearly believed exactly that. But here is where the story becomes even more intense. The system was not free. Ferrari reportedly sacrificed engine power to make the concept work properly, with estimates suggesting losses of several horsepower because the exhaust flow became partially restricted. And Ferrari still considered the trade worth it. That tells you how powerful the aerodynamic benefit truly was. But Formula One never allows secrets to survive for long. The moment rival engineers realized Ferrari may have discovered a breakthrough, panic spread through the paddock. Mercedes reacted quickly. McLaren started experimenting. Red Bull joined the development race. Suddenly, multiple teams were trying to copy Ferrari's concept before the FIA could intervene. And ironically, that may have become Ferrari's biggest mistake. Because once several teams begin chasing the same loophole, the FIA starts seeing danger. Not only in performance, in cost, in politics, in the possibility of another massive development war exploding across the grid. And that is exactly when Ferrari's greatest innovations suddenly became the center of one of the biggest technical controversies in Formula One. What happened next is exactly why Lewis Hamilton reportedly exploded behind the scenes. Because from Ferrari's perspective, this no longer looked like normal regulation management. It looked personal. The moment rival teams started copying Ferrari's concept, the FIA suddenly accelerated discussions about banning it for 2027. And inside Formula One, timing like that creates immediate suspicion. Think about the sequence carefully. Ferrari spends months developing a breakthrough. The system proves effective. Other teams panic. Mercedes reacts. McLaren reacts. Red Bull reacts. Then suddenly the governing body moves towards shutting the entire concept down before Ferrari can fully capitalize on the advantage. That is why tensions inside the paddock are becoming so explosive. Because Ferrari believes they followed the regulations exactly as written. They did not hide illegal parts. They did not fail inspections. They simply interpreted the rules more aggressively than everyone else. And that distinction matters enormously in Formula One. This sport has always rewarded the teams willing to think differently first. Double diffusers, flexible wings, mass dampers, ground effect concepts. Some of the greatest breakthroughs in Formula One history originally lived inside gray areas. Ferrari believed the flick-tail mode was another one of those moments. But according to the report, 4 out of the 5 engine manufacturers are now prepared to support banning the concept, leaving Ferrari almost completely isolated politically. And isolation inside Formula One can become deadly, because championships are not decided only by lap times. They are decided in technical meetings, private negotiations, pressure campaigns, votes behind closed doors. Sometimes teams lose the championship battle months before the first race even begins. And Ferrari fans have already seen this exact story before. Back in 2020, Ferrari suffered major performance losses after FIA technical directives targeted areas surrounding their engine philosophy. Ferrari itself later admitted they lost part of their competitive edge after adapting to the changes. Now the paddock is quietly comparing the current situation to that exact period. And that comparison should genuinely worry Ferrari, because Formula One history shows something brutal. When a team builds an entire project around one technical philosophy, removing that philosophy rarely hurts only one part of the car. Everything starts changing. Balance changes. Tire behavior changes. Driver confidence changes. Development direction changes. And sometimes the entire project slowly collapses from the inside before fans fully understand what happened. That is exactly why Hamilton's frustration reportedly feels so intense right now. Because Hamilton knows time is becoming more valuable than ever. Every season matters. Every regulation cycle matters. Every championship opportunity matters. He did not join Ferrari expecting to wait years for another title shot. He joined because Ferrari convinced him they were building the future. A future aggressive enough to challenge Red Bull. A future advanced enough to return Ferrari to dominance. And now, before that future even fully arrives, the FIA is already removing critical pieces from the foundation. That emotional pressure changes everything, especially when you realize Ferrari did not stop innovating at the rear of the car. Because the deeper investigators looked into Ferrari's philosophy, the more another controversial area started attracting attention. The halo. And what Ferrari was doing there may have convinced the FIA that the Scuderia was pushing the limits of the regulations almost everywhere possible. The deeper the FIA investigated Ferrari's car, the more one uncomfortable truth started becoming impossible to ignore. Ferrari was not relying on one single loophole. They were building an entire philosophy around exploiting every millimeter of freedom inside the regulations. And nowhere was that more obvious than around the halo. Now, most fans see the halo as a safety structure, the protective frame above the driver's head that has already saved lives multiple times in Formula One. But Ferrari looked at it differently. They saw airflow. They saw untapped aerodynamic potential. And most importantly, they saw empty space that nobody else was using properly. Ferrari introduced small aerodynamic winglets near the base of the halo, redirecting airflow around the cockpit toward critical performance zones of the car. On television, the pieces looked tiny, almost irrelevant. But in Formula One, tiny details create massive consequences. Imagine opening a small window inside a moving airplane. Even a slight change in airflow can completely alter pressure, stability, and efficiency. That is exactly how modern Formula One works. And Ferrari understood that better than almost anyone. The 2026 regulations introduced a narrower central halo pillar, creating extra legal space around the structure. Ferrari immediately exploited that opportunity. That detail reveals something important about Ferrari's mindset. Most teams read regulations defensively. Ferrari read them aggressively. They were searching for possibilities instead of limitations. And the FIA started realizing something dangerous could happen if this continued. Because once one team finds aerodynamic performance in a safety structure, every other team is forced to follow. Suddenly, the halo stops being purely about protection and becomes another expensive development battlefield. That is reportedly one of the main reasons the FIA now wants those halo concepts restricted for 2027. But here is where Ferrari's situation becomes even more complicated. Because while the paddock focused on the aerodynamic controversy, another technical battle was quietly developing inside the engine itself. And this one could hurt Ferrari even more in the long term. The FIA has already tightened regulations surrounding engine compression ratios, confirming that no power unit can exceed a 16:1 compression ratio under any operating condition. Now, that sounds extremely technical, but the basic idea is actually simple. Imagine compressing a spring tighter and tighter before releasing it. The more efficiently you compress energy, the more power you can unleash afterward. Modern Formula One engines work in a very similar way. And according to the report, Ferrari invested heavily into an aggressive engine philosophy for the new era of regulations. At first, FIA checks only measure compression while engines were cold. But starting from June 1st, those measurements will also happen under hot operating conditions where the real performance differences appear. That changes everything, because some engine concepts behave completely differently once temperatures rise during real racing situations. And suddenly Ferrari finds itself trapped under pressure from every direction at the same time. Rear aerodynamics, halo airflow concepts, engine interpretation, political isolation, future regulation votes, all while Lewis Hamilton prepares for what may be the final championship window of his career. And this is why Hamilton's frustration reportedly feels so intense inside the paddock right now. Because Ferrari did not build this project expecting half the foundations to become controversial. They believed they were building the future of Formula One. Now they are watching the FIA slowly close every opening they discovered before rivals could fully catch up. And Canada is now hanging over all of this like a ticking clock. Because Ferrari can still legally use every one of these systems there. Which means the Canadian Grand Prix suddenly becomes far more than just another race weekend. It becomes a statement, a final demonstration